I don't see our little YouTube sign. Did you get on, Emily?
Yes, it just clicked over now, so you're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I call the meeting to order then at 1:04. We do have a full council today. Our deputy clerk will be substituting until Kate is on location. So I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. I see head shakes all around, so there are none. So we'll move to our delegations and presentations today. We just have the one, but it's a big one. We have Glenn Dees, the Director of Finance for the County of Northumberland, and CAO Jennifer Moore here with us today, and they're going to walk us through the county budget. Glenn or Jennifer, whichever one of you would like to pick up the reins, the floor is yours.
I will start. Thank you very much, Mayor Kane. We're happy to be here. Once again, we are back doing what we affectionately call our roadshow. We are visiting each member municipality. I know last year was a little bit mixed up, but we are back this year and we are doing the virtual presentation. So I think most of you have seen our presentations in the past. So they really haven't changed that much other than some new information. So we will move to the next slide. And of course, we have the presentation outline here, and it's what we have done in the past. We'll just talk a little bit about what we did in 2020. We'll look a little bit at what's coming up in 2021. And of course, Glenn will review some of the highlights of the budget process. We are making a little bit of a note. We know that everybody is very conscious right now of photos and who appears in the photos and how they look because of COVID. We do have some older photos in this presentation where people are not wearing masks and they might look like they're a little closer than they should be, but we can assure you that those ones are stock photos that we've had around for a little while. And you'll also see that there's lots of other photos that we've taken with folks that are appropriately, have appropriate PPE on for what's going on with the pandemic. So we just want to make that little bit of a disclaimer that if you see the photos, we do know and understand the rules quite well at this point. Next slide, please, Emily. So we always do start off with this slide just as a bit of a refresher about the county's vision to bring together people, partnerships, and possibilities for a strong and vibrant Northumberland, and also our mission to be a best practices leader of county government and a collaborative partner with our member municipalities and community partners. And of course, this strategic plan does have our 4 main priorities of economic prosperity and innovation, sustainable growth, a thriving and inclusive community, and leadership in change. And when we go through the presentation, particularly in the first part, you'll note that we do speak to our projects with respect to those main priorities because they're all very connected. So as we move to the next slide, excuse me, we really didn't feel that we could kick off the presentation without speaking a little bit to what's been happening with COVID-19 at the county and what our response has been. We know that it was just before this time last year when everything changed in the way that we do many of our services, and things moved very quickly this time last year, which is why we weren't out and about doing these presentations. But the county did react quickly to make sure that all of our services were still delivered to our residents as a priority. So as we go to the next slide, we'll see just a few photos that capture some of the things that were going on. We just have a couple of slides to talk about COVID and in some ways how we've reacted and responded. So social services, of course, was significantly impacted by COVID in the way in which we deliver our services. We had to shift gears. I guess the word today is pivot. We all use that word on a regular basis now. So one of the main things that social services did was to look at our temporary shelter, and within about 48 hours, they were able to relocate Transition House into the Covered Collegiate Institute and create that temporary shelter. It is now gone back to the existing location and augmented with motel services, but it was a great opportunity to see us collaborate with so many community partners to make that happen. Our IT team, I know you work closely with them with the services that they provide, and they of course had to get into gear and rapidly see the majority of our office staff relocate to working from home. So that saw them ramp up a lot of service there. Of course, we can't mention the pandemic without talking about the Golden Plough Lodge, and the infection control practices have been stellar over the past year. We're currently, we have not had any residents infected. We, as you're aware, we've had some staff test positive throughout the year, but our residents have remained safe and virus free. And over 96% of our resident population are fully vaccinated at this point in time. We did see out in the community, we got funding early last year for our community paramedicine program. They have been partnering to do assessment centers, as well as now moving in to support the vaccines, and we'll probably see them even play a bigger role in the vaccination in the coming weeks. Our emergency preparedness staff, of course, were very active in getting things up and running. And most recently, what they did is we actually created the call center that helped book over 3,300 people for age 80 plus in order to get the local clinic at the CCC up and running. We hadn't done a call center before, but I guess that's part of the spirit of the pandemic, is we'll just figure it out and make it work. And we saw our teams come together and figure out how they could do that to get folks booked in a couple of weeks in advance of when the provincial call center was up and running, along with their website. We also saw our waste management facilities. There's a great picture down here in the corner of some of the lineups that we saw as we were controlling access to that. I know firsthand you would have seen Bewdley as we were making sure that folks were safe going into those centers and they could be distanced, and we could get everything set up there to be safe. And then, of course, like your council, we've been holding our meetings through Zoom. The next slide, we'll go through just a few more highlights. Again, tourism has changed dramatically with looking at hyper-local tourism campaigns, how we can just have folks within our own region support some of our local businesses and what would have normally been supported by tourists. And our tourism group are currently looking at the strategies that they can employ to support those businesses as we move through the pandemic and hopefully come out the other side shortly. Finance, of course, has been very busy. We've been updating council and monitoring expenditures, and we've received significant funding, particularly from the province. And of course, that all requires detailed tracking and reporting and a lot of extra work there. Our provincial offences team have moved to virtual court, which is a completely new process, and that is up and going now. We also made changes in a number of our operating practices around payroll. We had things like pandemic pay for healthcare that was funded by the province. Our archives and museum have been very busy, and they've actually come up with some creative ideas like the COVID-19 stories so that we can capture some of the learnings and our experiences for future generations to know what it was like during this pandemic. So they're getting those in real time. Communications has been very busy throughout the entire pandemic, making sure that the public know what's going on and how they can receive their services. And some happy news, we had some really positive stories as well come out of this with the Agri-Food Venture Center. There they made over 18,000 servings of soup that went out through the United Way and our various partners through the Food for All warehouse to help feed those in need in our community. So those are just some of the highlights from COVID. We could go on, but it gives you a bit of a flavor of what some of our operating departments were focusing on throughout the last year and a bit. When we look into 2020 in review, yes, if you could change the slide, please, Emily, thank you. We'll just go through some of the key items, and we'll go right to the next slide around economic prosperity and innovation. Again, you can see some great snaps here of some of the things that we've been doing. And you'll also notice that probably some of these photos don't have as many pictures of people in them as what we've had in previous years. Of course, with a lot of folks isolating and working from home, we don't have those great announcements and photo ops that we would normally get. One of the highlights under economic prosperity and innovation is around the economic development or the economic recovery task force that was put together to look at ways that we can support business to not only get through the pandemic, but how they can get their businesses back on their feet when we move out the other side, hopefully as vaccinations are in arms over the next few months. So the top item is the one here on the top of the list, broadband connectivity. We know that particularly in our rural areas that is an area that many of our businesses and residents are looking to see improved. The county is working on some projects there, particularly one larger project, and it's about forming partnerships with the private sector and pursuing government funding. So we're awaiting some feedback on that to see how that will progress. The Digital Northumberland initiative is about something we worked on with a lot of local businesses to try and enhance their online sales, getting some micro grants out to help folks to improve or establish websites so that they could run their businesses that way. We also found that across the country, we know that women and youth were particularly hard hit by the pandemic, and looking at ways that our economic development group could support those groups. So there's through the Women Entrepreneurship program that is federally funded. It has been up and running and really seeing a great uptake with about 45 women and youth entrepreneurs growing their business, and also through the starter and summer company programs to try and make sure that those folks still get an opportunity for some of the development and support opportunities that they would have even before the pandemic. So those are really helping target some of those entrepreneurs. As I mentioned earlier, tourism is a key focus as we look at getting through the pandemic, and that hyper-local tourism and how we can market to our neighbors or very close areas is where we're focusing. Some of those activities have had pause pressed on them given the latest wave of cases increase and being in the third wave. But coming out the other side of this, we do have some material that will start to be launched when we're ready to invite folks back into our businesses. We've also been working, as I said, COVID-19 websites to make sure that our operators have some of the information that they need, looking at resources for consumer travel and how we can help train folks. They've secured some funding through this area to enhance what we can do for our local tourism and marketing campaigns, and then also partnering with the province. So we move to the next slide for sustainable growth. This is where we get into some of the stuff that we build, and we see a little more tangible items here quite often. The launch of the Northumberland Next official plan update, it underpins a lot of that growth. That's currently going through the consultation phase. We just had a public meeting, and that will be taken into consideration as we see the updated OP go back out for approval eventually once we get that information incorporated. As I said, it is being called Northumberland Next because we know that we're looking to the future, and that's quite important as we continue forward. The introduction of countywide development charges. This was new. The county has not had development charges before other than a specific area that was quite small. And this is something that we see as quite important to setting the foundation as we look at future growth and development across the county and ensuring we have some of the financial resources that we need to ensure our services are able to continue as we grow. Key infrastructure. There's actually, despite the pandemic and all that was going on, there was a lot happening with infrastructure and very significant infrastructure over the past year. We came closer to the redevelopment of the new Golden Plough Lodge in Northumberland County Archives and Museum. We did turn the sod in December. If anybody has been around that site lately, you will notice that it is quite dramatically changed. I tease our engineers that it's a big pile of dirt, and as of the last couple of weeks, it's a pile of dirt with pipes going in the ground now. Not so much with all the rain the last couple of days, but I do tease them. What it actually means is that there has been all the excavation work is complete, and they're starting to begin with the water and sewer and other utilities and underground infrastructure going in, and very shortly they will start with pouring the footings. So we're seeing that project move ahead very, very quickly, despite my accounting version of what the engineers are putting together. So we can have some fun with that team. We did move forward as well with the community consultation for the Campbellford Bridge, and we're now at about 30% complete for that design. So both of those are projects that have been on the go for quite some time, and it's very exciting to actually see them starting to come to fruition, and getting that dirt moved is really quite exciting to see. When we look at some of our roads area, we always know we talk about some of the roads and what's happening. Last year was another busy year with surface treatment. The county crews surface treated about 95 kilometers of roadway in 2020. 75 kilometers approximately were member municipality roads, with the balance being at the county infrastructure. We also opened our joint emergency services base in Campbellford. It had been under construction for a year and a bit, and even in the middle of the pandemic, we were able to get that work completed. And that is another initiative with the community paramedics. They're now co-located with the local fire department, and in this case, it was a bit creative because the municipality of Trent Hills required a new home for their council chambers. So they are on the upper floor of that facility. So definitely a multi-use building, and very much, we did a virtual open house. So it is all online if anybody wants a peek inside, since we couldn't have the hot dogs and hamburgers that we would normally do to open one of those buildings, sorry. We also launched the final phase of our Recycle Right program. And I know that we're all using our blue bins and our gray bins and our green bins so that we can sort and assist with getting more waste diverted from our site. These additional programs will see us divert about 3,000 tons of waste annually from our only remaining landfill. So that's about 500 garbage trucks worth of materials that we will see diverted. So this does extend the life of our landfill, which is the goal. We want to make sure that we can maximize that asset. Moving to the next slide, thriving in inclusive communities. We want to acknowledge some of the softer services that we provide and how we support our community. It's not all about the bricks and mortar. So we did have a great announcement last year with community paramedicine. As I had mentioned, it was very timely with the pandemic. They've been able to support a lot of the initiatives in the community with the pandemic, but the goal of that program is really about outreach in healthcare, getting out to our rural residents. And I know that most of Hamilton Township is in fact rural. This is seeing things like remote patient monitoring to try and reduce the number of trips that folks have to make into their healthcare provider. It reduces the number of 911 calls. There's a lot of chronic conditions that can be managed, and that's very much a benefit to our residents. So there's a lot more to come. But that's a very exciting program when we got that support from the province. We also know that affordable housing is a critical issue, and there's a picture up there in the top left corner showing one of our existing buildings, which will be, we'll see that site redeveloped as what we're calling the Elgin Park project. And we will see that go from the current 18 units to about 40 units of affordable housing. So that intensification is important as we build those new units. And we got some excellent funding support from our provincial and federal counterparts to make that happen. When we look at homelessness, I did mention the transition of the shelter through the pandemic. We were also able to have both daytime and nighttime warming rooms this year for folks that were looking to get out of the elements, but could not find space in the shelters because of the limitations. So again, through some provincial funding, we were able to offer that. We also have a new program that is truly transitional housing. It's called Next Steps, and it is a wraparound type service to help folks that are currently homeless get these skills, the life skills and supports that they need so that they can move into a more stable, permanent housing type of arrangement. And that program has been launched, and it's off to a really great start for those folks that can be put into a much more stable situation there. And then we're also working through the social assistance modernization program. This is largely led by the province, but many impacts to us and how we deliver social services here in the county. And we're seeing a lot more that can be done paperless. That, of course, was probably stimulated even more so by the pandemic, as we can do more and more services online for our clients without them having to come into the office. We're also seeing changes to things like employment supports and how those are being delivered instead of being delivered by the county. There's now a partnership with Fleming that's being funded by the province to see that happen. So we will see more around social services modernization in the next couple of years. The next slide is leadership in change. And when we look at this, again, lots of activity here. Digital literacy is very important, and there was some education opportunities for the local public to help improve their skills and keep folks safe on the internet. Especially through the pandemic, we saw a lot more internet use, and some folks not necessarily having the skills that they need to make sure that it is safe. We're quite proud to say that we have done an annual report for many years, and that was again published last year, but this year we did win the Marcom Gold Award for communication because of how that was designed and laid out. So that was quite nice. If you want to find out all of the details about what we did in 2019, that report is available. 2020 will be coming up this summer. We did make strides in advancing the various initiatives in our strat plan, one of which was Join in Northumberland. Many of you are familiar with the software Bang the Table, and it is based on that, and so that this will help enhance the way that we can get community consultation and folks involved in what we're doing, so that we'll have more public participation. And we are also seeing that through a change in our governance structure. We've now gone to a committee structure, and those meetings are, of course, all open to the public. We also did a service delivery review that was with the provincial modernization funding that was targeted at a number of our departments, not all of them, but those that had not been looked at through other projects. There was over 30 recommendations that come out of that report. Some were revenue generating, some were direct savings, and some were opportunities to reinvest through productivity savings. And we will be bringing each of those forward to council for approval in the next couple of years as we're able to move towards implementation. Looking ahead to 2021, we'll go through, if you could just slip ahead a couple of slides there, Emily, thanks. Yeah, and we'll go right there, perfect. So when we look at 2021 initiatives, some of these are building on what I've already talked about. I did mention the broadband connectivity, and we hope that we'll be able to continue to move that project forward this year. As I said, we're looking at funding and waiting on some information and opportunities to be finalized there. Tourism, of course, is quite important. As I've said, it is a main driver for our local economy and making sure that we're ready for when we can invite guests back into our community. And then we also know there's a lot of work that we're doing through the Business Entrepreneurship Center with coaching small businesses, getting them training and resources, and they continue to work with us as we look at the need there. When we go to the next slide, again, we mentioned community paramedicine program is that continues to ramp up, and we'll see that expand. There's more opportunities coming in the future when we look at how do we support folks that are still living in the community while they're awaiting a long-term care bed, and what we can do to help those folks. We're hoping to get that program launched. I mentioned about the remote patient monitoring and how our team can work collaboratively with primary care physicians and other providers to do check-ins, monitor the wellness, and work back with community care to try and avoid hospital visits for those individuals. Again, the capital incentive programs in Elgin Park are both around housing and looking at ways that we can try and increase some of the housing available in our community. We know that housing prices and rents continue to escalate, and we know that housing is increasingly becoming a challenge for our residents. So ways that we can stimulate that are going to be really important, in ways that we can partner with our member municipalities to try and see some increase in affordable housing throughout the whole county. The safety and well-being plan, this is a partnership. It is mandated that we do this. The county is taking the lead, and we have representatives from all of our member municipalities as we do a collaborative plan here, as well as a number of community stakeholder organizations. And I believe your very own mayor is part of that as well. And when we look at social assistance, as I said, the modernization initiatives that began last year will continue through 2021 and 2022. And when we get to the next slide, I think I'm down to my last one or two here. As I said, the Golden Plough Lodge redevelopment in Northumberland County Archives and Museum is well underway. When you take a drive past, you should see a lot happening this summer as that site begins to evolve. And the Campbellford Bridge, we're continuing on design there. Our goal, of course, is that if funding becomes available, we want to make sure we can get our design to a state that will be able to take advantage of funding opportunities. We have a lot of construction, roads and bridges. I won't go through all of the lists, but of course we are working throughout the county again this year. And we will be continuing to make sure that the new two-stream recycling program is working well. And the next slide, as I said, the Northumberland Next official plan amendment with the natural heritage system, that is well underway in the consultation phase. Participatory budget pilot is new. We'll say that a few times fast. We will be launching that for this year's budget cycle, and it is a way for members of the public to both participate and provide feedback on the budget planning process, but also to be educated on some of the options and choices that we need to make as we're developing the budget. So that software is underway. We have the software selected, and it's being implemented now, so it'll be ready to go for this summer. As I mentioned, the service delivery review, we will continue to implement those. And of course, I think I've talked in the past about lean initiatives and making sure that we're streamlining where possible and eliminating waste and unnecessary processes from what we do as we continue to train and work with staff there. Virtual court, as I said, is up and running, and both virtual or a hybrid will be offered as we go forward. And there's lots going on with IT as we continue to modernize that. So that is a real quick overview of last year and this year. And Glenn has a couple of slides to hit the highlights on the county budget. So over to you, Glenn.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And good afternoon, everybody. Emily, if you could flip to the next slide, please. All right, so in December of last year, County Council approved the 2021 Northumberland County budget. I'm just going to touch on a few of the highlights here. What we see over the next two slides are images off our budget infographic. So this is available on our website. We've been doing this over the past few years. Certainly provides some very useful information in an understandable format for the public, and I would certainly encourage anybody who's interested to take a close look at our infographic. But you'll see here that the total approved budget this year is $188.4 million. This is at the top left, and you can see from the pie chart how this amount is broken out between our operating budgets, our capital budgets, as well as what we contemplated for transfers to reserves. So at $188 million, this is by no means an insignificant municipal budget, and it really is representative of the county being a full service upper tier municipality. So we have capital intensive services such as our county road network, social housing and waste, and we also have very labor intensive operations as well when we look at the 24/7 operations of the Golden Plough Lodge and within our paramedics department as well. At the top right, you'll see that the total county levy this year, or the amount of property tax that's assessed by the county, is $60.4 million, and this equates to about an $18 increase to the median household within Northumberland. So the 2021 budgetary increase for an average home in Northumberland is around $18. So the levy increase is 1.58% after growth, and it's comprised of an increase dedicated to infrastructure investment of 0.64%, and then the base levy increase itself is 0.94%. So those two components get us to the year-over-year increase of 1.58%. It's important to note, though, that the uncontrollable or committed items that we had for the year already represented a 2.9% increase alone at the onset of the budgetary process. A large portion of this was really attributable to 2021 being the first full year of the new waste collection contract for organics and two-stream recycling. And staff did provide for 2 days of detailed budget deliberations with council, with that final outcome being the base levy increase of 0.94%. Below this, there is a further breakdown of how the county funds our various programs and services. So these are our revenue sources, from property taxes and government grants to user fees and POA fines. You'll see by the green bar in this chart that there is a significant amount of money that the county receives from upper levels of government, primarily provincial ministries. So it represents $42.9 million in revenues, or 35% of the revenue that we have within the year. So this really does highlight for the county the risks from any possible future years reductions to provincial funding that really is tied to the delivery of mandatory programs. As part of the 2021 budgetary process for the county, one of the things that we did review with County Council is looking at all the discretionary items within the budget, which really did highlight that there is very little within the county budget that is not either mandatory or really a core municipal service that the county provides for. Then below this, you can see specifically how the property tax portion of our budget is spent by service area. So this is specifically for that 60.4 million in levy. You'll see that roads is the largest with its capital program and maintenance activities, the roads department, and then social services follows. So it's important to note that even though we do receive significant funding from provincial ministries for social services program delivery, there still is a significant contribution coming from the levy for providing those programs. And in many instances, much of it is required from the perspective of a cost matching formula where the provincial ministry provides some funding, and then the county as the municipality is also required to provide a proportion of that finance. I'll just comment quickly before we go on to the next slide that part of our budgetary process with County Council is ensuring that we look at the long term. So the focus is on the long-term 10-year plan that we provide for. And it's really ensuring that Council has the information that they need from the perspective of ensuring we're able to meet our long-term requirements. And just to provide a little bit of perspective on what that can look like, a 1% reduction in the county budget for 1 year of the 10-year model. So if we look at our current year budget as an example, a 1% reduction results in a cumulative loss of $7.1 million over the 10 years. So that's significant. However, if we do the same exercise, if we reduce each year of the 10-year model by 1% versus what we currently contemplate, it results in lost financial capacity of about 40.6 million. So it's really important to highlight the impacts that can be seen longer term when looking at current year budget decisions. And just to give out some context as well from the perspective of what 1% means for the average home, that translates to about $12 for the average home within Northumberland County. So now looking specifically at our 10-year financial plan, you can see on this slide here that we have a number of major construction fleet and equipment projects identified, and we continue to allocate funds to reserves every year towards helping finance the cost of these projects. One challenge that we do have to contend with in our financial planning model is cost estimates for projects, particularly construction projects, and we've seen that most recently in light of COVID, with escalation in pricing as a result of construction activities. Also tie that in with uncertainty with provincial funding levels, and it does create significant challenges when we develop our 10-year model. But you'll see here the largest capital that we spend over the next 10 years is within our roads department. So we spend on average over $10 million a year. Obviously, the GPL rebuild is significant at over $100 million. It is the largest single project that the county has ever undertaken. And in respect to community housing, if you look towards the bottom, you'll see that we're anticipating over $53 million over the next 10 years towards expanding the county's social housing stock. So certainly our long-term model has placeholders in respect to expanding social housing. Another challenge that we face along with all municipalities within Ontario really is the ongoing infrastructure deficit. So this is really the financing that we require to maintain, rehabilitate our existing roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. Really, the financing that we require really does outpace the resources that we do have available. In 2015, we did introduce a levy specifically for infrastructure, which is helping us to gain some ground in this area. And Council's 2020 adoption of a countywide development charge, as Jennifer mentioned, is certainly another tool that will help to finance requirements related to the growth of our community, really ensuring that growth pays for growth, and it's not the existing tax base that is carrying the burden of infrastructure that really is related to growth coming into the community. Lastly, just in regards to tax policy, I'll mention that the county has eliminated the property tax discount on commercial and industrial vacant and excess lands, shifting the favorable tax savings onto productive or occupied commercial and industrial properties. This really is aligned with what the province has put in place from the perspective of education taxes for commercial and industrial vacant and excess land properties, as well as what many municipalities already have in place or are contemplating putting into place. So next slide, please, Emily. So that brings us to the end of the formal presentation, and we can certainly take any questions at this point.
Well, thank you, Glenn and Jennifer, very much for that. I just saw a quick comment in before I open this up to the rest of council in regards to the budget. Direction from the county council to staff was that they wanted a 0% increase. I know that's going to throw a real monkey wrench into Glenn's long range plans, but the pressures from the 2020 budget, as Glenn's just mentioned, already indicated that we would go over 2%. So for Glenn and his staff and the senior management positions in the county, for them to come in at 0.94, did an absolutely amazing job. They actually decreased. If you think of it, that it would have been over 2% if we just simply held the line where it was. That would have been because of changes in waste management and some positions that were hired in July that we paid a half a salary in 2020 and it became a full salary in 2021. So they really did an amazing job. I'd like to think of this as a COVID budget, and hopefully, if we can kick COVID in the pants, we'll be back to some modest gains, hopefully in some succeeding years. But I really did need to compliment Glenn and his staff for the work that they did on this year's budget. It was amazing. So I'll open that up to other members of council. If you have any questions for either Jennifer or Glenn. Scott, go ahead.
Well, again, thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Jennifer. In the past, I've started off some questions with, the amount of time we have to discuss and the size of the budget being 188 million. And I stay with those thoughts, but there's a more important thought that I want to share with you and a comment I want to share with you. While the two of you were speaking, I wrote down a few bullet points: Golden Plow, the paramedics, the vaccination center, the agri-food building and what it's done. And I think those are the strongest points that I want to comment on, in that your department, your management, yourselves, your whole organization has done a superb job in dealing with COVID-19 and the issues that were changing, I'll say hourly, although I'm maybe not quite right there, but certainly daily. And I just want to say I've heard nothing but positive comments in relationship to those bullet points I've just referenced, and from myself, thank you.
Thank you. That's nice to hear the feedback.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Other members? Yes, Pat, go ahead.
I'd like to echo Scott's sentiments about some of the things that you've got moving forward. I have a couple of questions. Some of it may have been in the presentation, I just didn't catch it. What's the expected completion date for the Golden Plow and the Archives and Museum?
We should be moving in the fall of 2022.
So the year and a bit.
Yeah, almost 2 full years of construction.
Okay, and then I don't remember whether it was your section or Glenn's section, but you talked about the, I won't have the wording exact, but I'm sure I know what I'm referring to. The increase in available social housing potentially in the future is the way I understood what was said. And then I noticed that on this slide, it said there was, I want to say $58 million also for community housing. Do those two combine at some point? Like, is that part of that 58 million going towards extending like the potential housing, or what's the community housing portion, I guess is the other way of putting it?
So we can maybe, both of us can add a bit to this, Glenn. So yes, currently the county has 344 units of social housing, and that's currently all RGI, rent geared to income housing, across the county. I mentioned the Elgin Park redevelopment. So that's, for those that are familiar, that's at Elgin and Darcy. We have currently 9 semi-detached, so 18 units there. So those will be in 2 phases. They will be demolished and rebuilt in more apartment style housing. So that will take us from 18 to 40 units. So that's part of the development. And we already, we're planning to break ground on that later this year. So hopefully by mid to late summer, that will be under construction with the first phase. And then we have acquired land, and there's a parcel of land on Ontario Street in Cobourg that we're currently in the process of working with a couple of partner organizations. It'll be Ontario Aboriginal Housing and Habitat for Humanity Northumberland. And jointly, we will develop housing on that property. I think we aren't into design, but I think we're around estimated 60 units or so is what the ballpark is for what we'd be able to do jointly on that project. Between those 2 projects, it will all be more affordable housing, but it'll be a blend of RGI and market or affordable market units. So we've got 2 things there. One, we want more affordable units, but we also need to look at models where the county doesn't contribute as much levy into the operating. So balancing some market with some RGI to look at the project coming out at a zero. And can balance that is what we're hoping in the future. So those are 2 projects that are underway. And then we've also made comment that in our housing strategy, we need to look at even more. So we don't have any other projects on the go, but we have indicated to member municipalities that we would look to find properties and look at other developments, as well as implementing a capital incentive program that will see tools that might incentivize private sector builders to try and build some affordable housing with the developments that they're doing. So a couple of different things that are happening. So building some county owned and operated units, sometimes on our own, sometimes with partners, but also looking and trying to encourage the private sector. So I don't know, Glenn, do you have anything to add with the financial piece of that?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. So as Jennifer mentioned, we have 2 projects that are really, one is well underway, and that's the Elgin Street redevelopment project, as well as the preliminary work around Ontario Street and the partnerships we're looking at there for bringing that forward and starting to look at what design might be for it. But in addition to that, we do have placeholders within the long-term plan. This kind of goes back to my comments about ensuring we have a 10-year model and that we're capturing all our needs going out into the future, so that we have the ability to finance these projects and their recognition for forward. So in total, what we have for social housing is just over 53 million. So that would include the projects that are definitive, that are already underway, as well as the placeholders that we've put within our 10-year model for further expanding our social housing stock.
Okay, small question to go with. I love all the stuff that you're in the process of doing. The housing issue is huge. Everything that you've mentioned has been Cobourg related. Have we got anything happening in the north?
We don't have anything at the moment, but we have we've expressed interest, and we're looking for, hopefully some of our member municipalities could assist or partner with us to find opportunities to build on or to find land. We don't currently have any land outside of the properties that we've identified. So land acquisition is the first thing that we need to do. And that'll probably be a bit of a joint initiative to find suitable properties throughout the county. So Cobourg currently has the longest wait list to get into an affordable housing unit. So it's a little over 10 years right now. And then we do track that list throughout the county. So everywhere has a wait list. Everywhere is a long time if you're somebody that's in need of housing. So we will be looking to do other projects throughout the county, but we don't have anything lined up at the moment.
Okay, and then one more fairly quick question, I think. Township recently started a greenhouse gas environmental change committee. None of your initiatives for 2021 specifically targeted that area. Did you have any comment on that at all?
We actually are working to build that into all of our projects. So we have said both the Campbellford Joint Emergency Services Building and the Golden Plough Lodge are designed to LEED Silver specification for sustainability. And we're also looking at that level of certification for the Elgin Park housing building. Each one is a little bit unique or different as you look at the purpose of that building and what the standards are for the way it's operating. But that has been where we've been moving to. We do have a number of other some smaller initiatives are looking at our everyday work in ways that we can be green. You know, when the roads department is looking at what they do, they're certainly considering the environment. When we look at waste management and we're looking at how we do our recycling or how we try and divert material away from the landfill, all of those things would fall under that sustainability type initiative. So I think right now our goal is more to build it into our operations in every single department or every single building design versus we will have our plan. I think that has been done in conjunction. Judy Smith has been working on it for Hamilton, and she's also, of course, working for that plan for the county. So we will have that plan developed later this year. But in the meantime, we've been looking at just building green or sustainable processes into all of our operations and certainly building design.
Okay, thank you.
So we have less than 10 minutes. Any more questions from Larry or Mark before I turn it over to staff? Larry's saying no. Mark? Nothing? Okay. Any questions from staff, CAOs or clerks or treasurers or anyone else? All right. It looks like we've wrapped it then. Jennifer and Glenn, thank you very much for your time. That was long and the wealth of information you sent our way. Thank you very much for answering our questions. I wish you success on the rest of your tour. Hopefully you'll survive the whole deal. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't have a agenda up, but I'm sure we need a motion to receive this presentation for information. So we have a mover, please. Thank you, Larry. Sorry, I just lost the screen. Is there a seconder?
I'll do that, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have it moved and we have it seconded. All in favor? See all the hands. Thank you. That's carried. Thanks again, Glenn. Thanks again, Jennifer. But that was our only presentation. That's a good thing because we have another meeting coming up. If there's nothing else from anyone, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Larry, again, and Scott again. All in favor? And that's also carried. Thank you, everyone. See you in a few minutes at Committee of Adjustment.
Thank you.